Hi guys, my name is Seb Tudor. I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Um, I promise at some point I'll change my T-shirt. Um, I'm still recording on the same day, don't worry. But one of the things that was brought to me recently that a client wanted to talk to me about, and that really interested me, um, that was one of the first things that I wanted to bring to you guys on this channel, um, was they asked me and they wanted to talk to me about what they thought made a strong, or what I and they thought made a strong person. And that's a tough question. I mean, this particular individual seemed to think a lot in terms of what them being strong and them being weak. And I get that. I think of myself in very similar ways, you know. I think many people do. I think that's one of the reasons why, for example, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in the States at the moment, people are worried about Hillary being too weak to be president. People are attracted to Donald Trump because he appears strong even though he's not. And so it's obviously a thing that resonates with a lot of people because strength and weakness are things that we are that are brought up to us quite early on. If a friend of yours in the playground can lift a thing that you can't lift, for example, then one of you is stronger than the other. That's just an objective, it's just a straightforward observation. Um, and so, the movement of that into what makes a strong person inside, in terms of um, the things that allow them to be strong when moving through the world. Because not everyone needs to be a bodybuilder. Not everyone needs to be um, some vast level of genius with a completely indomitable mind. Um, and so this was a very interesting discussion, and I'm thankful that they brought it up to me because I'd thought about it in the past as well. But having this actual conversation with them and seeing what they concluded, and then drawing my own um, further conclusions from that, um, really helped put it down into a concise um, set of things that we felt made a strong person. And I think personally, using these three things, the kind of I did a bit more work on afterwards. Using these three things and making sure that you have them doesn't mean that you're infallible. It doesn't mean that you're unstoppable. But what it does mean is that you can demonstrate a level of integrity and presence and awareness that other people who haven't cultivated these things in themselves may have issues with. They may not be able to stand up to things the same way that you do. But what it comes down to is we put it down into three R's. The first one being responsibility, the second one being reason, and the last one being resilience. Um, I'm sure I'll talk about these into the future a bit, but just to summarize them now, as responsibility, if you don't know what you're responsible for, or if you're not willing to take responsibility for it, then it's everyone else's fault. It's a bad workman blaming his tools. It's a show of how not quite comfortable or not quite secure you are. And one of the other things is that when I've been dealing with individuals that have come to me for dating or confidence or relationship coaching, um, one of the things that stands out is that, especially when people have come out of a honeymoon period on a new relationship or something like that, they start trying to adopt the problems of the other person as if it's their responsibility to do so. And it's not. And the fact that they're either trying to take too much responsibility or not sure what responsibility to take is as much of a demonstration of their lack of comfort and arguable weakness within that environment, as it would be if they just said, "Oh no, it's not my issue; it's entirely theirs." And so it's like, well, what happens if what does it look like if you're actually taking responsibility? Well, think about it in a work environment. If you actually take responsibility and you know what your responsibilities are, then you don't get into trouble. Then when something goes wrong, you know what you can do to make it right, because you've got a specific set of things that you deal with. For example, if something broke when I was at work doing retail management a while ago, then if I owned up to it and I took responsibility for that issue, then there would be no concerns about who had done it, and it would just mean, okay, it's time to fix it. Yeah, there might be some moaning, or there may be some comments one way or the other, but if it got fixed and the result was a good one afterwards, then it really didn't matter. So responsibility, and knowing, firstly, being able to take it, and secondly, knowing what your responsibilities actually are, is a very important thing to being, what you could consider a strong person. The second one, reason. You need to be able to follow a line of logic to be strong. Because if you're unrealistic on one side or the other, or if you're not able or willing to accept the real world and you have to live in a fantasy, or you have to misconstrue things or selectively take and represent information just to allow yourself to live comfortably within your own head, if not in the rest of the world outside, then that shows an area of kind of shaky ground. Like if you've got a person that's willing to go, can we do this? And then the answer is no, and then they go, oh, all right, and then they go and fix their plan, and they go and find a new way around it, and they come back with another idea. That's a strong person. That allowed them to persevere. It allowed them to continue to press forward, even in spite of the fact that their initial plan, their initial thought, rubbed up against the real world and didn't pan out. Whilst when you've got someone who argues from a point of either complete absolutes, like for an example here, like someone who comes back at you every time with the reason that it is like this is because God made it that way. So I don't know how that plays into the grander scheme of things, but if you have specifically done something and it hasn't panned out, then there's a good chance that the real world was one of the things that stopped you. If you wanted to fly unaided and jumped off a cliff, gravity would be your literal downfall. And so if you didn't have any kind of reason or logic or kind of appreciation for the fairly kind of uncontested power of gravity as far as like an unassisted human jumping off a cliff is concerned, then, and we're claiming that it was only because God told that, well, said that that person shouldn't fly, that they didn't fly, it really leaves so many just like open, broken parts of what you're doing. You know, you need to be able to follow a course of logic, appreciate the real world, and use it to your advantage. You know, I can't begrudge the people who run super churches, for example, going on. I'm sticking on religion for a moment, just to explain this. But it's like I can't begrudge them because they have taken set of stories again, seen how the real world works, whereby it revolves around money in a lot of different ways. They've seen that there are a lot of people out there wanting for things that they just can't attain, but clinging to these stories. And so they make money out of it, so that they themselves can advantage themselves and push themselves forward. And as much as that might not be a very nice thing to do, logic dictates that if they wanted to make money, then that is a way they would make money. So, you know, I'm not saying that they're strong people necessarily, but what I am saying is that at the very least, that's a place where logic lives. A twisted kind of logic, but a logic nonetheless. And then the last one is resilience. And this is very simply the same kind of fortitude and resilience that you see in, I don't know, at the end of Rocky. You know, or in possibly every single Rocky movie ever made. Stallone, you're responsible for a lot of things, but the whole, doesn't matter how hard you get hit, you just have to get back up again. If it's the moment that you let yourself lie there and give up that things don't go well. And this is as important when it comes to dealing with the outside world coming in as it is with your inside world trying to get out. You know, you're as much of a resilient person, in my view, for being able to walk down a street being harassed by people as you are for having your like darkness inside try to get out and you not let it. Not saying that I hope that anyone ever walks down a street purely being harassed, and not saying that the people harassing them are in any way nice people, but I would put them in the same kind of space where the resilience for both your internal push and pull and your external push and pull are both important. And if you can handle both of them to one degree or another, then I would count that as strength. And then we moved on to my client and I. We moved on to moving. Yeah, maybe. But we moved on to talking about where we could actually see the weakest of people. Because if we've identified the things that are strong, then the weakest of people are surely going to stand out. And one of the places that we started talking about was extremists, both in politics, in religion, in many places. And they never take responsibility for themselves or for the situations that actually pertain to them, or they misconstrued the issues, pardon me, they misconstrued the issues that should be attributed to themselves or should be attributed to another group, and they confused them. They obviously don't follow reason because they're extremists. There is no such there you cannot hit an extreme in politics or religion or any culture really and accept it as the reason and logical action. You know, if you are so far on the outside that that your ideology or your doctrine or whatever it is that you're a particularly extreme version of, um, if you're believing it and taking it so literally or to the greatest extent, so in such a far and bizarre direction that you are actively trying to hurt other people, that you are disadvantaging yourself just to try and make your goals that make no sense come true. If you're literally doing or believing or saying bizarre things, and not listening to people that at times will probably put evidence right in front of you to try and help you. If you're going to ignore the evidence that for your beliefs or ideas or working practices or whatever else to be incorrect or false, then you're lost. And then resilience. Well, who are the people that cry and scream the most whenever they get criticized? Who are the people in religion or politics especially who will at times literally attack people in one form or another because they feel insulted or hurt, when no one really affects your emotions apart from you? It's one of the things that, I mean, personally, I'm just for that message, I would say that most people should work in retail. Sod kind of being subscribed into the military. Forget about kind of mandatory conscription or any kind of draft like that. No, 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 no. Do that for retail, so that you can be shat on by hundreds and hundreds of people every day just because you're in a uniform. That teaches you some resilience. Because one of the first things that you get told when you go into that industry is that the only person that controls your emotions is you. And you aren't you when you're there. You're a cog. And so you need to keep yourself under control. But when I was talking to my client about this, they picked up that idea and they were like, oh yeah, no, kind of the crazy right in America, the Bible Belt kind of guys, the ones that the militia that took over that federal building over there. Yeah. Well, they weren't taking responsibility for what they were doing, even though people were telling them they were incorrect, and there were things that they shouldn't be doing. They ignored it, even when evidence was put in front of them. Whenever they were questioned, they would make threats. They would get fiery, and in the end, it ended in violence. Yeah, okay, but it happens on the left as well, doesn't it? Where you've got the people in far left organisations going, it's not our fault, it's simple example, it's the patriarchy. There you go. There's one that I've not heard on YouTube before. But it's not our fault, it's the patriarchy. Okay, well, is it though? Because patriarchy doesn't really seem to exist. Democracy does. Patriarchy doesn't, or at least not in the Western world. There are still places where it exists, but the reason and logic behind their arguments, it kind of comes down to, well, actually, here are some facts and figures. Let's take a look at them. Oh no, they don't exist, or they do exist, or only these ones exist. Okay, and then resilience. Well, I'm sure every single one of us has seen on YouTube at some point someone's video turning up in some feed somewhere where someone is crying about something because someone said something nasty. Yeah, considering that, I mean, in fact, the the I can't remember what it was now, but the guy who was saying humongous is his name, and he was getting screamed at. He made a really bad fucking joke. I mean, I don't think the guy even knew where he was going with that joke. It was a very, very dad joke, but he came out with that and then got screamed at because apparently this girl just didn't have any resilience or fortitude against dad jokes. And well, yeah, I'm sure. Again, it was trending for a while. I'm sure we've all seen that video. But yeah, as you can see, I think from the discussion that I had, these three things kind of stand out as the main traits of strong people, and they are very, very obviously lacking in people that can be very easily identified as weak. But then, who are the strong people? Well, they're the people who get their head, keep their heads down and get the work done. They're the people who are capable of success. They're the people who will take responsibility for the things that they need to do, won't take responsibility for things they don't need to do. They're the people that will follow a stream of logic. They're the people who will not either let their bad inside or the bad outside come out or affect them. And no one's perfect. There's always going to be one moment or another when someone who is usually a saint suddenly turns around and starts really ripping into someone with the worst language you've ever heard. But again, that's them being human. That's not necessarily, moments of weakness happen. But, there's a reason why people like Richard Branson, for example, are doing very well, or have done very well, because he took responsibility for the things that he needed to deal with. He didn't start taking responsibility for things that he didn't need to deal with, seemingly, because otherwise his company wouldn't have run particularly well when he was first building it. Reason and logic, well, he's continued to follow trends. He's continued to compete. Yeah, he's had his ups and downs with his business, but he's taken advice and he's taken information on board and done things with it. And resilience, well, I'm sure many other people, especially in the UK, remember the how so many of the Virgin megastores, kind of music and DVDs and media and whatever else, shops shut down, and just disappeared off high streets and things, and it's like didn't stop him. And I realised that that probably didn't involve him all that much decisions wise, but again, he didn't kind of let it collapse. Like his legacy is the part of his legacy that is Virgin has maintained itself very well, and it all started with him, and it all grew with him, and seemingly, from what I know of Richard Branson, it's because he displayed, these three key behaviours. But yeah, I'm going to stop rambling now again. But ultimately, I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think makes a strong person? Because I've thrown this at a few people, and they seem to agree with me for the most part, and I can provide examples as I have done now. But it did come from one discussion that then grew into a slightly bigger discussion, now one that I'm bringing to you guys. And so, what do you think makes a strong person? I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. But yeah, first topic video done. If you guys liked it, please feel free to subscribe. If you liked it, then please like it. And again, if it's something that you think might actually help someone, maybe identify some gaps for them that they can move forward just through me rambling, then please feel free to share it on. Keep the discussion going. The more people that are willing to talk, the better, regardless of the situation. So yeah, have a good one, guys.